I have spent over a decade dealing with injuries, hitting training plateaus, fighting through the peaks and valleys of competition success. The list goes on. These are the 5 mistakes that have absolutely murdered my strength gains. And we're also going to give you all the ways that you can fix them. The very first mistake that can absolutely kill your strength gains is doing way too much, way too often. This is something that honestly is probably more common than most other variables. And there's really 2 aspects to doing too much too often, and we're gonna break that down in a second. So first and foremost, let's throw this on the board. Numero 1, too much. Now, what do we mean when we say too much? Those 2 aspects I was referring to. Ego, so simply loading more weight than you should, doing way too much, and doing that too often. But then the second piece is going to be essentially training too hard, which you don't necessarily hear a lot in the industry. Nowadays, I feel like everyone's touting from the rooftops about people not training hard enough. And although that is true, it has its place, but you guys have to understand that there is a balance, there's a yin and yang here. So before I get ahead of myself, let's talk about the first point. I'm gonna label it as ego, but really what we're talking about is making sure you're not being too ambitious with your weight choices. So we're gonna put this here. Ego, the little dot. Again, it's very simple. Just be smart. Don't allow externals or even how you feel to sway or persuade your decision making when it comes to sticking to your program and doing what has been prescribed or doing what you know you should be doing. I'm gonna give you guys a very general, common example of this. So let's say your program or your coach calls for a single at RPE 7. Okay, this means you're going to use a load, use a weight in which you could have gotten about 3 more reps with. You're not doing those extra 3 reps. You're doing 1 rep with a weight that you could have gotten, let's say 4 reps with. Okay, so RPE 7. You're warming up. Long story short, you hit a weight and you're like, I don't know if that was RP 7 or not. Maybe I should stop there, but you know what? Fuck it, I don't care. I in the past, I've been able to hit 20 pounds more than this when I had an RP 7 single, so I have to go up. You end up taking a load that was so difficult, you end up hitting an RP 9 single. This is you going off program. This is you allowing your ego get the best of you because of something you did in the past, because your favorite influencer on Instagram lifted this weight, because you decided to do what was not optimal for you, especially in that moment. So your ego ended up causing you to do too much. And if that happens too often, you will absolutely run yourself into the ground. There's a time and a place to PR. Now is probably not that time, to be honest with you. So stick to the plan, trust it, and also keep in mind that this is usually when injuries happen, okay? You usually get hurt when you're doing too much too often. Now that second aspect I was talking to you about is accessory stuff. How should we write this? Let's just put accessories. And then what we're gonna do, we're gonna grab the red marker here and we're gonna put a big X so that we know that we're doing too much, we gotta slow down, we gotta stop, okay? Because later in this video, we're also gonna be bringing up the word accessories again, but it's gonna be in a different context. So chances are you are pushing your accessories too hard. You're doing too many accessories. Too much volume too often leads to too much fatigue. Remember that when you are trying to build strength, you have to prioritize recovery. You just do. You probably aren't going to feel sore all of the time when you're on a proper strength program. Now, don't get me wrong. You might still have some DOMS effects. You might still feel pretty sore. You might still feel like you're really taxing the muscle, lots of mechanical tension during your sessions and stuff. That's fine. But you don't want that to be the priority. You want the priority to be performance, producing maximum amounts of force. And the problem with the fatigue accumulation, especially when your number 1 goal is strength, if it stacks too high and if it stacks too high too fast, you end up digging yourself in such a massive hole because remember, one of the keys to strength training is gradually increasing the actual load you're using. You need to start lifting heavier and heavier and heavier, right? Especially because there's a skill adaptation at hand. So when you're doing that, but you're also burying your body in a pile of fatigue, it's just a recipe for disaster. All right, so chances are if you find yourself hitting a crazy plateau or you're constantly getting hurt or something like that, you're probably doing too much too often. Before I move on to mistake number 2, I wanna give you the fixes for this stuff. So I'm gonna give you two strategies, okay? The very first is to begin incorporating deloads into your programming if you are not already. If you are already incorporating deloads, it might be time to restructure those deloads. It might be time to introduce more deloads throughout your programming. But like I said, deloads are going to be very, very important and a phenomenal strategy. Now, if you don't know what a deload is, essentially every 5 to 6 weeks, you are going to forcefully give your body a time to pull back. So you're going to intentionally prescribe yourself a period where you're still going to expose yourself to all of the training variables, intensity, volume, frequency, all of that stuff. However, you're going to do so in a lighter fashion, in a way that's not as hard, as intense. And the idea is your training should kind of take this shape of, it builds momentum over time, right? So you start off, let's say on week 1 of a program, and then you push really, really hard for like 4 or 5 weeks, right? Gradually goes up, goes up, goes up. And then going into the next block or the next cycle, you have a deload. And so it dips back down and then you go up, go, go. You see what I'm saying? So the idea is that everything should build on top of each other and you're giving yourself the time you need to reset and to recover. Okay, so that's the deload strategy rather. So for this, if you're doing this too much, time to take a step back. For your accessories, if you find yourself pushing really, really hard on your main movements and you're struggling with your recovery as a result, right? You're just hitting a wall every single time. It's probably because you've built up too much fatigue like we talked about. How to fix that? Pull back. And this isn't just like a deload pullback. This is quite literally pull back every single week. So instead of doing 4 sets of every single accessory exercise, maybe do 3 or 2. Instead of having 5 accessories every single training day, maybe do 3 or 2, right? Now, another strategy you can use when it comes to your accessories is having a harder top set for your accessories and then backing down to some lighter, easier sets. Or you can even take an ascending set approach, meaning if let's say you're gonna do 3 sets of 10 on a dumbbell bench press, your first set of 10 it's not easy, but it's not super challenging either. Your next set of 10 is challenging, but it's not impossible. And maybe your last set of 10, because it's ascending, your last set of 10 is going to be the most challenging out of all 3 of those sets. Okay, so those are just some general strategies you can use to fix this mistake. Deloads and pulling back on the accessories. Now, mistake number 2. It's actually funny because this mistake is actually the opposite end of our previous mistake. This mistake is you are not doing nearly enough, often enough. All right, so before I dive into it, and there's quite a few pieces here, we're gonna put this on the board. Mistake number 2, not enough. Man, I love it when I tell myself I'm just not enough. My therapist thinks I'm fucking amazing when I say that. Alrighty. Well, since we're all being vulnerable here about our mistakes. Okay, so this mistake, all right? So, not enough, nearly enough. It's exactly as it sounds, but there's a few pieces here that you probably wouldn't think of. The most common one that you'll hear, of course, is that you are not training hard enough, you're not training to failure, blah, blah, blah. We're gonna get to that, but that's not as important, especially when it comes to strength gains. What is super important, the silent killer, is not enough top-end exposure. One of the special aspects of strength training is the neural adaptation you get when exposing yourself to super heavy loads. You're teaching your body to produce maximum amounts of force for 1 rep in a given movement, so a skill, across time, to get better at that across time with X amount of weight. That's what you're teaching your body. That's the adaptation. So in short, you need to make sure you are frequently, and I use that word sparingly, but frequently exposing yourself to the top end. You need to make sure that you are touching the heavy stuff, so to speak. And so if you are not doing that enough, if you're kind of going from like 70% of your 1RM to then all of a sudden 100% of your 1RM, your body's just not gonna be adapted for that. First of all, it needs to be exposed to that over time, but throughout that time is where the adaptation occurs, okay? So that's why you'll see in a program that like, you know, it's a 4-week block and each week you may go up an RPE or you may go up X amount percent and then you reset a little bit and then you go up again, right? So it's really simple, but you need to make sure that you're exposing yourself to a top end, okay? And we're gonna talk about that in the fixes. So like I said, the very first thing is top end exposure. Okay, that was a long word. Did not expect to spend that much time writing on this board. Following this idea of simply not being exposed to enough heavy work, giving our body enough exposure to the top end weights, The next bit is not being exposed to enough volume. So one little tactic that coaches use to make sure that their lifters have successful preps, or you're able to run a program successfully to begin with, is to build your work capacity as an athlete. This means prescribing a certain amount of volume, especially in the main work, earlier on, so that by the time you get to the halfway point or even the end of a program, your fitness level is high. You're prepared for it, right? So for example, let's say you were going to try and hit heavy sets of 3 or heavy sets of 5 at the end of your training program, and you want to try and PR. Well, yes, there's the strength aspect, meaning can you produce that much force? Can you literally load the weight and then take it down and take it back up? But there's also the aspect, can you sustain that strength across the time of the set? And that's where work capacity comes in. So very short piece here, but one other aspect of this mistake is simply not exposing yourself to enough volume earlier on in the main work to build your fitness level so that you can handle it later on in the program as the weights get heavier. Okay, now the last piece, I'm gonna write both of them down at the same time when we discuss this piece because they kind of go hand in hand. Last piece is you're simply not pushing your accessories hard enough. You're not training to failure. Now, should you train to failure all the time? No, we talked about that in the first mistake. However, your accessories really do matter. You need to be very selective with which ones you do, and each one should serve a purpose, especially when we're talking about strength. But when it comes to actually training them and pushing them, don't just fucking lollygag through them. Like, actually be intentional about it. Actually push yourself with your accessories. You're there to train. You're not there to work out, right? The moment that you decide to hop on a program, the moment you decide to commit yourself to a competition, or you're simply trying to be really, really good at a very specific goal, whether it's strength related, it could be a different sport, it could be CrossFit versus powerlifting, maybe you're a sprinter, whatever it is, you've committed yourself to the goal. So now you optimize for that goal. You are no longer working out and exercises. You are now training. You are now training. You think it's fucking healthy for me to just load 750 pounds on my back and take that week to week? No, but I want to be a fucking elite athlete. I want to be the best in the world. If that's what it takes, that's what I do, right? If you want to be healthy, yeah, you can do some zone 2 cardio, maybe do 30 minutes of HIIT and 10 minutes of weight resistance training. Sure, that's fine for Jack and Jill in their 50s, sure. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we are here to be elite. We are here to grow, to push our bodies past the realm that we once thought possible. So I say all this to say, push your accessories hard. Okay, be very intentional about your accessories. So let me just make sure we have this on the board here. We said work capacity. Boom. And accessories. And I don't actually have a green marker physically on me, so we're just gonna put like a little, this is creepy, smiley face. I don't know why I did the eyes like that. I don't even know if you guys can see that. That's fucking weird. So this is the mistake, and I know this is quite a bit, but essentially just in your mind think, I'm not doing enough. I'm simply not, for me this is very easy. I say this to myself all the time. I'm not enough, I'm not enough, I'm not enough. Terrible, terrible affirmation, I don't recommend. But chances are, if you're hitting a lot of plateaus, and if it's not mistake number 1, it's probably gonna be mistake number 2, where again, you are not exposing yourself to the top end enough, you're not pushing your accessories hard enough, or you simply have not spent the time to build up your fitness level to be able to handle the program in the long run. Now, how to fix these things, we kind of already covered it when talking about the mistakes themselves, but you want to make sure that you are exposing yourself to that top end. So what does that mean? That means actually prescribing yourself that, or following a program in which they have that prescription there. There's obviously a process here. There's a system here. If you're looking for great programs, we have a coaching app. Highly recommend checking that out. Plenty of programs that you can follow, tons of clients who have had tons of success, but there's also plenty of free things out there as well. You don't have to just pay our $50 a month for our video resources and all that stuff. You can absolutely find some free resources online. Might take a little bit more legwork, but that's an option as well. Either way, I definitely recommend you find a program, or a coach rather, that you trust, because that will take care of all of that, right? So fix number 1 really is to actually intentionally prescribe your intensity and make sure that you're touching the heavier loads week to week, at least semi-frequently. And what does that look like? Maybe it is once a week, every week. Maybe it's twice a week, right? Depending on what level powerlift you are, especially, like we've got a secondary squat day that primes our primary squat day, which means that the top set of that secondary is gonna be heavier than what you would normally do, because you wanna make sure you're prepared and ready for the squat day that you're gonna have at the end of the week. Just all these little games and tactics and tricks, but the ultimate umbrella here, the ultimate concept here is that you are trying to make sure that you're exposed to the top end, because remember, strength is also a skill. There's a neural adaptation that happens. So you need to feel the heavy loads. You need to actually work under those heavy loads in the specific movement that you're trying to move it in order for you to have the adaptation you're looking for when it comes to strength, okay? The next fix, of course, is to simply start your programming off with the mindset of, I am going to have to sustain my strength throughout X number of reps, okay, at the end of my program. So I need to make sure that I am at least giving myself some of that volume earlier on, and maybe even a little bit more than what I plan on doing later on, so that by the time I get there, I'm accustomed to it, I'm adjusted to it. And the last piece here for your accessories, this one's super easy. Just fucking train them harder. Like, just actually be intentional about your accessories, push them hard, okay? Those are the 3 fixes for these 3 aspects of this mistake. Taking those 2 points into consideration, now we can kind of blend everything going into mistake number 3, which is shitty recovery. Your poor eating habits, gaming late night, and binge drinking on the weekends probably is not helping your training. I know it's a fucking shocker, but you'd be surprised. All right, so definitely need to improve your recovery. Let's talk about it. First, of course, we have to put it on the board. If we don't put it on the board, then we didn't even say it. It didn't even happen. It must be recorded. Okay. Shitty recovery can be summed up into 2 things: poor sleep, poor nutrition. Prioritize your sleep, okay? It's something that's really important for your overall health and function, and it is also really important, obviously, for your training and your training results, and to create sustainable progress over time. Next bit, optimize nutrition. Now, this is a little bit trickier, and this is something that I think it takes time to find what's going to work for you. And obviously, if you're a competitive athlete, you may not have as much wiggle room here as somebody who's not a competitive athlete may have. For example, if you're in a weight class sport such as myself, you have to stay around that weight class. So if you find that you're just not getting enough food in, enough fuel, and you're constantly dragging, you feel like shit all the time, but you need to stay in that weight class and you're hyper competitive in the weight class, you know, there might be strategies you can implement, but it's going to be kind of tough, right? So depending on your situation and your circumstances, you will have more wiggle room than others or less. But the message is still the same. Your nutrition needs to be optimized, okay? And we're gonna talk about the fix in a second when it comes to that, but let's first put it on the board. And actually today, or for this one, I think I'm gonna use the red marker. So we're gonna put sleep. Oh, there's 2 E's in that. It's not slep. I'm thinking sped because that's what I am. And nutrition. Meow. And we're gonna use the red marker here. We're gonna go prioritize and then optimize. I sound like a fucking transformer. Optimus Prime. All right, dude, I'm not funny. Stop fucking, don't even try and pretend like I'm funny. Gavin's lost his shit again. All right, so probably because of my shitty recovery. So sleep, prioritize, we already talked about this. Nutrition, optimize, this is what we need to talk about. Again, we're referring to the fixes. How to fix this mistake. Stop making this mistake of shitty recovery. This really matters. Have a sleep schedule, stick to that sleep schedule. If you need an accountability partner, have somebody freaking hit you and be like, yo, dude, we're going to bed, you gotta go to bed, whatever. Nutrition, however, this is, again, like I said, a little bit tricky. I'm gonna give you the best fix that's most immediate. Carbs, protein, hydration. I would say that those are the most immediate. Those are the most powerful ones. If you find that you just don't have the energy in your training and your sleep has been optimized, chances are you need to eat more carbs. Your carbs are going to be your primary fuel source for pretty much all of your activity, unless it's like a very, very low intense type of activity, like you're just walking on a treadmill or something like that. That's when your body will usually prioritize fats. Either way, you probably need more carbohydrates. Protein, you need to make sure you're getting in enough protein. My recommendation for you is 1 gram per pound of body weight. This is just gonna make sure that you're recovering. Protein is essential for building your muscle, repairing your muscle tissue, and absolutely going to be necessary if you plan on sustaining progress over time, especially if you're in a caloric deficit. Okay, kind of acts as like a buffer against like, your body burning up muscle tissue. Okay, so carbs, protein, and now hydration. Hydration is really important, especially if you have big sessions, hard sessions, long sessions. You need to make sure that you're having water and electrolytes, okay? So that's just a step. Maybe up your carbs, especially around the time of your training. Make sure you're getting enough protein, huge. And make sure that you are hydrating yourself well, especially for your training sessions. All right, now on to mistake number 4. The 4th mistake is ignoring the importance of form and the importance of optimizing your technique across time. Okay, this is absolutely going to limit your strength. It may not kill your strength gains per se, although with shitty form, like really bad form, you'll get hurt. And that will literally kill your gains. When it comes to limiting your strength, this is going to be one of the biggest factors. So I'm gonna give you guys some examples here, and they are personal stories to me, but they're gonna shed light on the importance of technique. So a lot of times you have people ask the age-old question of sumo versus conventional, right? I can do both. I've done both. I've competed with both on world stages, Sheffield stages, like the biggest stages powerlifting has to offer, right? So I have used both styles of deadlift in the most important moments of my deadlifting career, so to speak, if you will, as a powerlifter. I now only deadlift conventional. And I'm gonna explain that in a second, but I wanna really highlight the journey and the transition. Not so much to give you an answer as to which one should you do, more so to show you and prove to you just how important technique can be. So when I was pulling sumo, yes, I had a very high top end, right? Could I deadlift sumo as much as I can conventional? Yes, absolutely. I think the most I ever deadlifted sumo was 760, and with a little bit more in the tank for sure that day. And then the most I've ever deadlifted conventional was 771, again, with just a little bit more in the tank that day. So I think they're very close in terms of the top end. So you may ask, like, well, what makes you choose conventional over sumo then if you were originally doing sumo and it was working? Consistency. My ability to replicate my positioning, rep after rep, set after set, competition to competition, it wasn't really there with sumo. I found that because of my leverages, my mass, just the way I'm built and structured, I wasn't able to replicate my sumo positioning, the perfect sumo positioning, over and over and over again. Whereas with conventional, although it taxed my body more and I couldn't handle as much work and volume with it, I found that as long as I managed my fatigue well with the conventional, I could very easily repeat the perfect positioning set to set, rep to rep, competition to competition. So that's what made me choose that. I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't focused and recognized the importance of form and of positioning and trying to optimize my technique for maximum force production, for being efficient and effective. And when I say efficient and effective, I would say efficiency is kind of like the bar path in the shortest range of motion possible, right? Remember, we're moving a weight from point A to B. In other words, we need to find the easiest or the most direct way to do that. That's usually the straightest path, right? So bar goes straight up and down, no movement side to side, more or less. And you're in a position where the bar is basically in line with your center line, your center of mass. Okay. In the squat, we may refer to this as like the midfoot. Okay. Again, this is just because that is the most direct bar path. Now, that's efficiency. Effectiveness, in my opinion, is positioning yourself so that you can use all of your muscle, use all your strength to produce maximum amounts of force. Okay. So you want a nice blend of both. As somebody who has 2 world records in one of the most intense stacked weight classes tested powerlifting has ever seen before, I can honestly tell you that I'm always changing, tweaking, altering my technique, always trying to optimize it. All right, so that is very, very important. I forgot I never wrote this on the board, so you guys probably weren't even paying attention. I mean, silly me, this is terrible. So 4 is technique. Mind you, technique doesn't just go for the main movements. Obviously, we're in the context of strength. So, you know, squat, bench, deadlift, any movement, usually going to be a compound movement, barbell compound movement that you're trying to express X amount of strength in. Usually we're just referring to those things, but technique also matters for your accessories, how you perform your accessories. Form is important, okay? Aside from just making sure you don't get injured, it's really important to make sure that you are optimizing your technique to lift the most amount of weight possible. Or if it's to build muscle, which we'll talk about in another video, we've got the same exact title, except we switch strength for bodybuilding. This is how we optimize the YouTube content, all right? 2 birds with 1 stone. Not really, but yeah, you get the point. When we talk about the bodybuilding stuff, you'll hear me talk about this, but let's say if you're trying to just focus on the bicep, right? You may not want to position yourself so that you can maximize the amount of weight that you can lift, because that's not really the point. It's not a strength movement for you right now, right? You're trying to just isolate the bicep. So in fact, you might actually set yourself up in a position where you can isolate the bicep and actually make it harder for you to work, where only the bicep is working as opposed to using the whole body. You follow? Okay, so how to fix. In short, what you want to do is take a look at your limb lengths, take a look at your leverages. You have to go through trial and error. You have to get under the bar and just try different shit. There are universal principles for each movement. However, outside of those things, everybody's different. Even your favorite influencer is gonna do stuff that will not work for you, and that's just a fact. So you have to be mindful of that. Don't be afraid to just take the time to try different shit. Honestly, that's kind of part of like the fun of it, right? Because you're always growing. Your body is always going to be changing. Your strength, like what allowed you to lift 500 pounds year 1 may not be what allows you to lift 700 pounds year 5. So you might have to make tweaks and adjustments. I can squat to crazy depth with 500 pounds. But once I load 700 pounds, all of a sudden things change. My technique changes. How my body responds to the weight changes. So I might have to actually change my technique, my positioning, right? And so these are things that happen over time. Okay, so that's how you fix it. Allow yourself to go through the trial and error of trying different things, learn from different people. You can absolutely watch your favorite lifters on social media. Just make sure you take it with a grain of salt. You're taking what they have and what they do, or what it looks like they do, and you're applying it to yourself, remembering that you are the core. You are the foundation. You're applying it to yourself. You're not trying to copy it. You're pasting it onto yourself and allowing it to kind of work with you as opposed to be pasted on top of you, if that makes sense. So that's how I would go about fixing the technique. The fifth and final major mistake killing your strength gains: not having or following a program. In other words, not having a good training system in place to ensure progress and results. Okay. Now, before you turn off your laptop and you're like, oh, this is a stupid point, obviously, duh, just fucking take a moment, take a breath, and hear me out. All right. But first, let's put it on the board. Okay. So, number 5, no training system. Now, I don't use the term training system simply because I think it sounds really fucking cool and I want to separate myself from the pack. That's not why I use the words, plural, training system, okay? The reason why I refer to a program as a training system is because it's kind of like all rectangles are squares, but not all squares are rectangles. Yeah, that's basically what we're talking about here. All programs are going to be training systems. Not all training systems are programs. And the reason why is because there's a lot that goes into a training system. It could be everything from your recovery habits to the actual training protocol. So the program, right, the meat and potatoes of it, to the tech review and all that other stuff, right? There's a system at play. There's a workflow. There's data. A program is usually just that. It's literally just exercises with weight prescriptions, rep prescriptions, maybe some notes thrown in there. That's why, for example, again, another plug here. I hate to do this, but it's just too easy. My coaching app, it has programs in it. But it's not just the programs. That's why it's a training system. Because yes, the programs are there, but we have every single exercise there with videos of me doing it to show you. So you have the technique stuff, plus the video resources, plus, and this is the big one, all of the features that are packed into the app to track everything, to give you data on everything, to measure everything. That's the purpose of a system. It's a routine, it's a structure, it's something that becomes reliable. That way it can be repeated, it can be measured, it can be innovated on, changed. Okay, that's the purpose of a system. A program is a little bit less than that. Now, if you don't have a training system, at least have a training program. Have a coach give you a program. Find a program for free online. Subscribe to our GA Training coaching app, GavinAimTraining.com. Check that out. There's a lot of different options, okay? I am not reinventing the wheel here. At the end of the day, you simply need to find something that works for you. But the point here is, gone are the days where you walk into the gym, roll the dice, and randomly decide which exercise you're gonna do that day and how much of that exercise you're gonna do and what's gonna come after that. You're not doing that anymore. No more shooting in the dark, no more guessing. Okay, that's done. We need to be systematic, intentional. The easiest way to do that is to have a program. The other major reason why this is a huge mistake is chances are you are going to encounter a lot of mistakes, let's say, for lack of a better term, that we've all encountered before. All the people, all the coaches, all the athletes who have written programs, we've all encountered a lot of mistakes in the past. We've all hit training plateaus. We've all dealt with injuries. We've all fought through those peaks and valleys when it comes to competitions and when it comes to recomping, when it comes to trying to focus on building muscle versus building strength versus optimizing and peaking that strength. And we've dealt with it all. So if you kind of just shoot in the dark, not only are you at a disadvantage already because you don't have a system to rely on and something that's measurable, but on top of that, you're not learning from anyone. You're not learning from anything. So you're now double disadvantaged. Whereas if you just took the time to spend money on a program or even use a free program or hire a coach, at the very least, not only are you getting a system that could work for you, right? It's not guaranteed that every program is going to work for you, but you might get that. But at the very least, you're going to learn from it. You're going to be exposed to something new, something different, and chances are what you're purchasing, especially if it's good, it has taken into account all of the mistakes that somebody would have had to make, stumble through, and fix and correct when they were going through their process, right? Because they wrote it. And so they wrote it with that in mind. At least that's how I do it, right? So again, in my opinion, there are multiple benefits to making sure you have a training system to follow. A, you get a good program that's measurable, that's repeatable, something that gives you data to work from. And it gives you stuff, again, so that moving forward, you know what's worked and what hasn't. Okay, we get that. But then the second bit is that you can learn from it. I have learned so much. In fact, I would argue the majority of my learning and my knowledge has come from not just my own trial and error and using myself as a guinea pig, but also learning from coaches and how they program. So not just hiring different coaches throughout the years, but buying, dude, I will buy my friends' programs. I will buy other coaches' programs, not to use it, simply to see how they program, see how they'd write it. Like, I want to know, okay, this dude's got a great squat. His technique is perfect. Love it. He's been able to create sustainable progress on his squat for the last 10 years. Amazing. How the fuck did he do it? Let me buy his program. It cost me $80. And that $80 may save me the next 8 years of plateaus rather. You see what I mean? So investing into this is very, very important, and it's a massive mistake. And I'm gonna leave you with this, a final story, okay? I made the most amount of progress in my training, especially my strength training, when I decided to finally invest in proper training programs and proper coaches. Okay, so I would say I started training when I was around 12, started weight training when I was around 14, and I started my first program, so to speak, when I was a junior in college, so I must have been around 20-ish maybe, 19, 20. When I started powerlifting is around the time when I really, really started focusing on my strength training. Prior to that, I was training out of a Olympic weightlifting academy. So instead of me having a program, I would kind of just walk into the academy and the head coach, the team coach would basically be just like, all right, you're gonna do this day. And then every single time I came in, he would tell me what I was gonna do and I just did it. Okay, so that was kind of there, but it wasn't really a system, it wasn't really a structure. So I wasn't really learning much from it. I was just being exposed to the daily trainings of an Olympic athlete. Then prior to that, obviously I played mainstream sports. So I've had coaches here and there when it came to my strength and conditioning there, but it's team sport, so it's a little bit different, nothing hyper specific. Point is, I made the most amount of progress when I invested in a specific program or a specific coach that was tailored to me, or at the very least was something that I could focus on, that I could see out in front of me and I could just go in and do. That was when I made the most amount of progress. In fact, the very first time I was ever exposed to powerlifting was at a mock meet at Manhattan College. I first went to Manhattan College and then transferred to Colgate University. So I finished my college years at Colgate. I started out at Manhattan College. That's where I was exposed to powerlifting because they held a mock meet in the gym. I had no powerlifting experience whatsoever. And I think that was when I benched 315. I squatted 515 or 525 or something like that, and then deadlifted 545, something like that. I don't remember. But I had no strength training experience whatsoever. I had just done some CrossFit when I was in high school. So no program, no structure, no nothing. Knew nothing about it. So that's where I started. Now look at where I am, having had programs and coaches and stuff. Now I have a 901 kg total, definitely have more in the tank, way more in the tank. We've got a 751 squat in competition, 771 deadlift in competition, 491 bench in competition. Night and day. Now I get it, it's been years, but do you see the difference between not having structure, not having a training system, and having training systems? So I don't want to beat a dead horse here, or kick a dead horse, beat a dead horse sounds pretty fucked up. That's fucked up, dude. Don't ever fucking make that joke again, all right? Press fucking record and cut it. Jesus, dude, you never know. These fucking videographers, they just get out of line. They think they can say whatever they want. Anyway, fucking piece of shit. You guys get the point, okay? I don't want to beat the shit out of the dead horse, all right? Fucking training systems matter, all right? So make sure you're investing in some quality training systems. We will see you guys next time. Really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. And please let us know in the comments if you enjoy these videos. We've definitely been enjoying filming them. And I think that this is probably one of the best ways we can provide tons and tons of value. However, we do have some vlog lifestyle stuff coming as well, although that's not as much fun. I live a very boring life. I do a lot, but not a lot. I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain. But anyway, thank you for taking the time to check this out. We'll catch you next time.